Seika is an overpowered, ugly, disgusting brat who doesn't know shit about women. In the previous life, Seika gets assassinated by the court, who fears his overwhelming strength. On his last breath, Seika casts a spell to get reincarnated into another world without Truck Kun's help and succeeds. On a starry night, countless ogres are wreaking havoc in an ancient city as no one dares stand in their way. Amidst all this, a massive dragon appears in the sky with a guy riding it. Regarded as the strongest exorcist, he believed that as long as he possessed power, nothing could be taken from him and he would be happy. He then releases his talisman that appears in front of these ogres and obliterates them, including some part of the city as well. He even saves a pathetic loser from getting devoured, but instead of getting appreciated for it, he gets assassinated by the court, who is scared of his overwhelming powers. The court had brainwashed his students to commit this heinous act, but he still doesn't blame them. At this point, he had realized that being the strongest has its own cons, and cast a spell that would allow him to reincarnate. But this time around, he vows to not repeat the same mistakes. Suddenly, he awakes in another world where he is sitting in the middle of a magic circle, and his father is appraising his magic power. It turns out that Seika is a pathetic loser who doesn't possess any magic power, which disappoints his good-for-nothing father, and even gets mocked by his brother. Seika has been reincarnated into a world where humans and demons coexist. In this world, he is born as Seika Lamperouge, the third son of the Lamperouge family, and doesn't even possess magic. Despite this, Seika realizes that he still possesses overwhelming spiritual power and experiments on some leaves. During all this, his brother Glai appears at the spot and attempts to discipline him for nothing, but ends up getting violated by Seika. Seika is now turned 7 years old, but being the son of a mistress, he gets ignored by everyone. But being an alpha, Seika doesn't give flying Fs about them and minds his own business. During all this, Seika has managed to create his own paper and forms talisman using them. As he's working on his talisman, a maid named Yifa knocks at his door and hands over his jacket. Just then, Glai appears at the spot and starts boasting about his accomplishments. He reveals that he'll be attending the Lv99 Magic Academy, which piques Seika's interest. But their conversation gets interrupted by their father, who ignores Seika once again, like you guys are ignoring your pending assignments. Anyways, as they're leaving, Seika seeks permission to train with them, and his father allows it. During the training session, Seika witnesses his brother's magic spells and gets amazed. Glai then gaslights Seika into using magic, and even though Seika cannot use magic, he utilizes his spiritual powers to create a fake fireball and launches it towards the target. This shocks Glai and the others, as their father explains that there are examples of people awakening their magical abilities after some time. Seizing the opportunity, Seika asks if he can join the Lv99 Magic Academy, but gets rejected by his father. After some years, Seika has now turned 11, and he can now summon Ayakashi from another realm. For starters, he summons the weakest Ayakashi, Yuki, who gets insanely happy to see Seika. After Seika lets her in on his situation, he decides to send her back, but she persists staying with him and transforms into a small fox. The following day, Yifa accidentally spills water on Glai's clothes and gets bashed for this. She keeps apologizing to Glai, but the worthless loser keeps insulting her. Staring at her melons, he instructs her to visit his room at night, which confuses Yifa. Seika, who is hearing all this, realizes that Glai wants to create a mini version of himself and intervenes to prevent that from happening, thus saving the world from another scum. Glai attempts to punch him, but Seika stops him with just a hand, further adding to his embarrassment. Following this, Yifa takes Seika outside where she shows him an injured carbuncle and asks him to heal it. Since Seika cannot use his talisman in front of Yifa, he asks her to turn around and heals the carbuncle in the process. Yifa then starts simping over Seika's abilities as Seika questions if she can visualize spirits. Hesitant in the beginning, Yifa replies positively as she reveals that she found his jacket owing to them. She further tells him that these spirits flock around Seika's stuff, but keep their distance from him, which is sus. Seika then questions if Yifa can order around these spirits, to which she replies positively again. This makes Seika insanely happy, as he's always been looking for someone who can manipulate spirits in his previous life. He then teaches Yifa to control the spirits, and their training officially begins. An entire year passes by, and Seika has turned 12 now. Unlike his brothers, his birthday isn't celebrated, and even his father is not present there. As he is heading towards his room, Glai and his elder brother offer to train him since Seika cannot use magic. Unlike Glai, who is a scumbag, their elder brother Ruff is actually a caring person who cares a lot about Seika. Just then, the maids inform them that a massive lizard is heading towards the mansion. Upon hearing this, Glai pisses himself as expected, and Seika immediately heads towards the monster. On his way, he notices that Yifa and another maid are in trouble, but before he could do anything, Yifa somehow manipulates the spirits and drives the monster away. It is now Seika's turn to show everyone who's the boss. After dodging its attack, Seika uses his combined 3 elements and strikes the monster with it. This single attack was enough to take down the monster, and this shocks everyone. Seeing this, the entire mansion starts cheering for him. With all of this going, Seika's father also appears at the spot and witnesses all this. He finally acknowledges Seika as a human being and holds a massive feast to celebrate his accomplishment. During all this, Glai is crying like a little but there's nothing he can do about this situation. Amidst all this, Seika's father wants to give him something as Seika desires to attend the Odania Magic Academy and wants to serve the nation with his talent. His father agrees to this and further states that he would still have to take the exam. Seika also wants Yifa to accompany him, but his father refuses, stating that Yifa doesn't possess any magic talent. Upon hearing this, Seika decides to demonstrate her skills to his father. Handing over a wand to her, Seika tells Yifa if she wants to accompany him, she has to create the biggest fireball and shoot it outside the window. Being the simp she is, Yifa manipulates the spirits and creates a massive fireball that shocks all of them. Seeing this, his father agrees to Seika's desires, which makes them insanely happy. Glai, however, is pissed off as he protests against this. According to him, he was supposed to attend the Magic Academy and Seika attended as well. Then they'll be violating the family's tradition. In response, his father pulls an Uno reverse and tells him that he'll be joining the army instead of Seika. Glai attempts to protest further, but his father mocks him for not working on himself all these years and hanging around with some pathetic losers. With no other option left, Glai challenges Seika to a duel on the condition that if Seika loses this duel, he'll have to leave the house. Seika obviously agrees to his conditions, and the duel is set to take place the following day. After all this, as Seika is resting in his room, Yuki questions if he's going to kill Glai, to which he replies negatively. Just then, someone knocks on his door, and as Seika opens it, he finds Ruft standing outside. The guy enters the room without permission and wishes him a happy birthday. He then hands over a gift, which is a useless glass pen, and also encourages him to study hard, unlike y'all couch potatoes glued to this vid instead of being productive. He also asks him to go easy on Glai, to which Seika agrees. As Ruft leaves the room, a gust of wind smashes open the window, and it turns out Glai is behind it. Being an impatient brat, he challenges Seika to a duel without all those rules and regulations. He deems Seika lucky for all this and strikes him with Flame Knot. However, his magic is just as useless as Sanji on an island of only men. Seika forges a barrier around him and then uses his talisman to paralyze Glai. He forces him to submit as Glai loses consciousness in the process. Keeping his promise with Ruft, Seika has to keep him alive as he carries him inside. He then laughs on his statement regarding all this being just luck. But he doesn't know that Seika has been watching Bleach and already had planned this 6 months ahead. 6 months back, Seika had summoned another Ayakashi named Banzai and instructed him to locate an elder newt and drive it out of its nest. Even though he wasn't the elder newt to ambush the city, the plan still went smoothly. Yuki then questions the reason behind doing all this in a roundabout way when he can achieve whatever he wants in this world filled with weak humans. Seika tells her that he had vowed to not repeat the same mistakes and wants to become one of those useless humans. Following all this, Seika and Yifa commence their journey towards Lodania as Ruft bids them farewell. On their way, Seika gifts Yifa a necklace that will attract elementals toward him, which makes her insanely happy. Amidst all this, Seika had forgotten that he gets nauseous on a carriage and keeps puking all the way. They eventually reach Lodania and head towards their inn. Meanwhile, his father is reminiscing about the time when Seika's father went outside to buy milk and never returned. According to him, Seika's father is his brother, who got lost in the demon country, where he probably fell for a busty demon. Even after Seika's birth, he had realized that Seika is an overpowered brat who could either serve as a hero or destroy the entire kingdom. Keeping this in mind, he decided to send him to the Magic Academy, which is a good place. Upon reaching the inn, Seika informs Yifa that he had booked another room for her and settles down. As they are conversing, Yifa asks Seika if she could visit his room at night, but being a dimwit, Seika fails to comprehend what she is saying and misunderstands the situation. Hearing this, Yifa heads outside to get something to eat, while Yuki tells Seika that he had fumbled this situation. She further tells him that Yifa is a simp who wants to take advantage of her status as his servant. Seika, on the other hand, is your average protagonist who doesn't know about women and dismisses the topic. The following day, Seika and Yifa head towards the Magic Academy where the entrance exam is supposed to take place. As soon as they enter the academy, a woman asks all of them to form a line and introduce themselves. Seika introduces himself as Seika Lamperouge, which shocks them, and they aspire to become his friends. Yifa also introduces herself as a commoner, as they are asked to place their hands on a magic orb that will appraise their magic aptitude. Yifa places her hand on the orb, and it turns out she has an affinity for wind and fire magic. However, when Seika places his hand over it, The orb doesn't glow, which shocks everyone. Seika then reveals that he doesn't possess any magic power, and the students' behavior towards him changes immediately. As they are bashing him for cheating his way into the academy, another girl appears at the spot and breaks through the line to get her magic assessed. It is revealed that this brat possesses affinity to all 4 magic types and is insanely strong. As she is heading back, Seika expresses his gratitude for diverting everyone's attention, but gets mocked by the girl as well. The written examination has officially begun, with Seika and Yifa appearing in it. After the exam, Yifa questions Seika regarding his exam as he boasts about the test being way too easy. Yifa, on the other hand, is worried that she might fail because she made some silly mistakes. Seika reassures her, stating that she can make up for it during the practical exam. He acknowledges that Yifa had less time to prepare for it. Following this, the practical exam commences, as a weak guy explains the rules in slow and reverb. The students are supposed to hit multiple targets using magic and will be granted points for each of them. With this, the exam begins. After some losers flaunt their useless magic, it is time for Yifa to teach them some skills. For her first target, she chooses flame magic and absolutely obliterates the target. The students get shocked since she's utilized mid-rank magic and didn't even use incantation to cast it. She then proceeds to use wind magic and destroys the target once again. This time around, she even shocks Seika since they had not practiced wind magic before. This makes him insanely happy and he appreciates Yifa for her efforts. It is now time for our good-for-nothing Seika to show off his skills. Some random Karens deem him a pathetic loser who doesn't have any magic. For his first target, he also uses fire magic and emits blue flames, which shocks everyone. He then proceeds to destroy the stone target using some chemistry, but you guys wouldn't know that. My man didn't even bother memorizing the spell names and just sprouts some random nonsense. He proceeds to obliterate the ice target as well and takes his leave like a Chad. With this, the exams are over as the teachers gossip about this year's applicants. Seika, Yifa, and Amayu were the stars of the show. One of them even postulates that Amayu might be the legendary hero. The following day, Seika and Yifa visit the academy to visualize the results. Yifa is scared that she might fail and urges Seika to not abandon her. In response to this, Seika reassures her and proceeds to find his name on the list. It turns out, he is ranked 3rd in the examination, which makes sense since he got a perfect score on the written exam. However, he gets shocked to see Yifa ranked 2nd on the list, but congratulates her anyways. Following this, they receive confirmation letters from the academy and are invited to attend the welcome ceremony. Later on, as Seika and Yifa are heading towards the academy, Yifa questions Seika regarding her skirt being too short. Staring at her thick thighs like a degenerate, Seika also deems them short. My man Seika is a man of culture indeed. Heading towards the school, they come across a magic circle surrounded by dark elementals, and Seika decides to leave it alone. He still leaves a Shigekami behind and proceeds towards the academy where the flat-chested girl is delivering a speech. During her speech, some demons ambush the academy as Seika immediately realizes that they are searching for something. He also realizes that the teachers are pretty much useless, just like my conversation skills with women. Amayu had to interfere in the battle and save their sorry. Seeing this, Seika notices that the monsters are pretty slow and wonders if they are a diversion. He then manages to locate the caster and rushes towards him. It turns out that the caster is a hideous demon, and Seika greets him with a lame poem. The ugly demon deems Seika as mid and mocks him for challenging him. The demon then summons some other demons and instructs them to ambush Seika, who immediately gets rid of them and even keeps one for research purposes. This piques the demon's interest and he decides to face Seika himself. He introduces himself as Gal Gadius, a metal demon who can command flame and earth. Seika attempts to pull an Eren Jaeger on him, but much to his surprise, the demon can visualize his talisman. The demon then counterattacks by hurling a blade towards him, but Seika dodges it smoothly. The demon, however, has a trick up his sleeve as he teleports the blade and manages to surprise Seika. Seizing the opportunity, the demon even cuts off Seika's arm, making him a Shanks lookalike. Seika then questions the demon regarding his objective, as the demon reveals that he wants to get rid of the hero, Amayu. The demon then continues attacking Seika and eventually slices off his head. The demon believes that he had gotten rid of Seika, but much to his surprise, the annoying brat is still alive. Seika recites another lame poem and reveals that he killed off his master who wrote it. The demon kills him off once again, but Seika reincarnates immediately. Now, it's time for Seika to showcase his abilities as he drowns the demon in water and electrocutes him with his Ayakashi. He even mocks the demon for not paying attention in school, just like you guys are doing. But the demon is still confident in his abilities. He believes that Seika must be out of his talisman, but man is he wrong. My guy Seika had created over 1,000 of these talismans over the past 10 years. To end things, Seika then summons his servant dragon Mizuchi, who ends up devouring the demon, who cannot comprehend how Seika is this damn strong. Now that the demon is gone, Seika attempts to call back Mizuchi, but the stupid dragon wants to flee owing to Seika's low spiritual energy. He still manages to capture Mizuchi back and decides to not summon him for a while. After all this, Seika heads back to the academy, where Amayu has already slayed all the lesser demons. At this point, Seika decides to make Amayu the strongest, even if he has to kill the demon lord himself. Exactly a month has passed by since that incident, and things have calmed down a bit. Seika wants to lead his life peacefully, and for that purpose, he wants to befriend Amayu. In an attempt to get close to her, Seika greets her, but gets ignored, just like you're ignoring that New Year's resolution. At this point, Seika doesn't even know how to make friends because he was a pathetic loner in his previous life. On their way to class, Seika notices a clay jar floating over them and teleports alongside Yifa. Their dumb teacher apologizes for this mishap, and after making sure that they are fine, he leaves. Seika and Yifa also head towards their class, where the professor informs them about the founding anniversary ritual, in which the top 2 students are chosen to deliver the student roster to a temple in the Rodnia Forest. Being the top students, Amayu and Yifa are chosen for this ritual, but Seika forbids Yifa from participating and forces her to withdraw. This allows Seika to accompany Amayu in this ritual. He even calls Yifa an ugly servant who shouldn't be allowed to carry such important rituals. I don't even know if he was joking. Following this, Yifa questions Seika if he's into flat-chested girls, to which he replies negatively. He tells her that he just wants to befriend her and save her from the toxic environment. Yifa then questions the reason behind befriending her, as Seika reveals that she is strong. Hearing this, Yifa asserts that she can also become strong since the spirits are starting to follow her. She can even crush his skull with her thick thighs, but Seika still wants Amayu. The following day, Amayu and Seika are handed over the scroll as they enter the forest. On their way, Amayu questions him regarding his relationship with Yifa, wondering if he has already created a mini version of himself. Seika attempts to clear the misunderstanding, but Amayu does not believe him. Just then, she feels a throbbing headache as Seika notices a mysterious magic circle similar to the one he saw earlier. Suddenly, both of them get teleported to a dungeon where some ugly lizards ambush them, but Seika and Amayu get rid of them rather smoothly. Seika even utilizes some weird spells, and upon being questioned about them, he makes some lame excuses. With this, they proceed to locate the exit, but Amayu is not optimistic about finding it, since dungeons have a low survival rate. To impress her, Seika lights up the dungeon using magic and also releases some talisman to locate the exit using his Ayakashi. Just then, Amayu notices some massive ogres approaching them and attacks them immediately. She gets a bit careless after defeating one of them and gets punished for it. The ogre smashes her into a wall and she loses consciousness. With no other option left, Seika obliterates all of them and even releases his servant Centipede to navigate the dungeon. After some time, Amayu wakes up and gets shocked to see all the ogres defeated. Her head starts throbbing again, and seeing this, Seika forms a barrier around them. The barrier relieves her headache, which makes him realize that she must be cursed. Amayu, however, is not too sure about that since she checked her entire body. Seika then utilizes his ultimate Riz and gets her to remove all her clothes. He examines her entire body, but fails to locate the curse mark. He then asks her for a strand of hair, and using it, he transfers the cure to a talisman. After this, Amayu once again questions Seika regarding Yifa, as he reassures her that there's nothing going on between them, and they're more like family. This shocks Amayu, as she cannot imagine a noble and slave being a family. Seika reveals that he was born to a mistress, and Yifa was the only person who treated him like a human. He then questions Amayu regarding his parents, but soon realizes that she is not comfortable talking about this and changes the topic. He then asks her about her hobbies, but all she knows is fighting and deems herself weird for this. Seika, however, reassures her that she is not weird, and that she just hasn't found the environment to thrive in yet. This makes her insanely happy as she expresses her gratitude. With this, they continue exploring the dungeon, and eventually reach the boss room. Amayu suggests not engaging the boss, but Seika is confident that both of them can defeat it. Both of them then ambush the boss and manage to defeat it rather easily. This makes Amayu overjoyed as she hugs Seika immediately. At this point, Seika has utilized his lifetime supply of Riz. Even though Seika had already located the exit, he still wanted to continue to get Amayu some experience and get close to her. After defeating the boss, they explore the dungeon further and come across a mithril sword and a ring. Amayu keeps the sword to herself, while Seika keeps the ring. Following this, they exit the dungeon and inform the school about this. Seika then visits Professor Cordell to return something he never borrowed. He then questions the professor regarding his ritual, which makes him realize that Seika had figured out everything. The professor then reveals his true form, and it turns out that he is a human spy working for the demons. His mission is to kill the hero, and for that purpose, he created a light magic spell to cast a curse on her. Seika deems him a genius for this, but he is still infuriated. He first transfers the curse upon himself, and then returns it to the professor. With this, the professor dies an ugly death. Seika had managed to figure this out thanks to his bee Shikigami, who had sent some pollen on his clothes. Later on, Seika gifts the ring to Yifa that would allow her to gather more elementals. As they are conversing, Amiyu also appears at the spot and ignores Seika once again. My man has a knack for getting ignored by people around him. Seika and the others have finally become sophomores following an entire year of hard work. Amiyu is glad that she wasn't held back because her grades were terrible, since she kept procrastinating just like you guys. She expresses her gratitude towards Seika and Yifa for helping her out. She is also glad that she can enjoy the food during the ceremony owing to those ugly demons. Seika, on the other hand, is a bit disappointed since the demons haven't attacked since then. I guess they gave up just like I gave up on my dreams. As they are conversing, Seika and Yifa are summoned by the principal, which makes them wonder if they're in trouble. On their way to the principal's office, Yifa comments that they haven't met the principal as Seika believed that he was a big shot noble from the capital. As soon as they enter the office, the principal greets them and is a bit surprised to see Seika. She was expecting a cocky brat who doesn't give a shit about people around him. She has also realized that Seika has seen things where the sun doesn't shine. Seika, on the other hand, is also surprised to see a demi-human as the leader of the Imperial Magic Academy. This pisses off the principal and she forbids him from addressing her as a demi-human. Seika realizes his mistake and apologizes to her. Without further discussion, the principal introduces them to a girl named Mabel Crane and informs them that they want one of them to enter a mixed discipline competition alongside Mabel. Being the self-centered jerk he is, Seika forbids Yifa from entering the tournament and takes advantage of her. Following all this, they inform Amiyu regarding all this, who gets furious that she wasn't invited even though she is the strongest. It is then revealed that the Academy is participating in the tournament for the first time, and they probably want Seika and Mabel to boost their reputation. Yifa further reveals that there is a massive prize money for the winner and a chance to join the Royal Guards. This piques Amiyu's interest because she is a gold digger, but she doesn't want to join the Royal Guards. After all of this, as Seika and the others are heading towards their class, Amiyu comments that Mabel is probably Chinese who wants to boost her CV at a young age, and will forfeit the tournament in the beginning. Just then, Mabel appears at the spot and mocks Amiyu by calling her weak. She even tells her that she wasn't chosen because she is weak as f***. This hurts Amiyu's pathetic little ego, and she challenges Mabel to a duel. She grabs some practice swords from some random NPCs and the battle begins. Amiyu carefully ambushes Mabel and gets folded immediately. Seeing this battle, Seika immediately realizes that Mabel was using dark magic, as Amiyu had also figured this out. She calls out Mabel for this, but gets ignored, just like you guys are ignoring that subscribe button just below. Mabel also advises Seika to forfeit the tournament if he's not serious about it. Later on, Seika commences his journey towards the royal capital alongside Mabel. Surprisingly, Amiyu and Yifa are also accompanying them because they were worried that Seika might create a mini version of himself. Amiyu also wants to see the royal capital since she has never been there. Yifa then asks Seika if he's fine traveling in a carriage, to which he replies negatively. Upon hearing this, Mabel mocks him for being a weakling who cannot even travel on a carriage. Amy reminds her that she should respect her upperclassmen, but she refuses, stating that skill is the only thing that truly matters. She also reveals that they are the same age because she skipped a year. Hearing this, Amy comments that all of them are the same age, but Yifa reveals that she is older than them. With this, Amy understands how her melons are so massive. Seeing all this, Mabel gets pissed off just because she is flat like a concrete road. She also envies the fact that all of them are enjoying their life without a care in the world. Seika sees nothing wrong with this, but Mabel doesn't agree with him. After some time, they finally reach the royal capital where Amiyu gets shocked to see all the tall buildings. Yifa suggests Seika to rest, but he wants to see the tournament draws and heads towards the Colosseum. Seeing the tournament draws, Seika realizes that he might fight Mabel in the semifinals if both of them win. Seika then asks Yifa and Amiyu to tour the capital while he is heading towards the inn. Yifa wants to accompany him, but Amiyu insists that they leave Seika alone. The following day, the tournament begins with Seika facing the Mad Dog Speedster from Garl's mercenary band. He boasts about his inhumane speed and how he can kill 10 mages before they can cast their spells. He also warns Seika to forfeit before he gets injured, but Seika is getting tired of all this bullshit. Just as the battle begins, the Mad Dog ambushes ambushes Seika and he even manages to strike him. But much to his surprise, it was a talisman and Seika appears behind him. He smashes the guy into the wall, and with this, the battle is over. On his way back, Yuki asks Seika to be careful because he has been using too many talismans, but Seika reassures her that this is necessary. After this, a mage named Balaam faces Kyle and gets his whooped immediately. Kyle actually possesses the evil eye and can paralyze his opponents. With this, the second round begins, and Seika is up against Labinair the Puppeteer, who specializes in anti-magic combat. She is confident in her golem and warns Seika to forfeit if he doesn't want to get hurt, but being the chat he is, Seika doesn't give a shit about her. Just as the battle begins, Seika summons his sickle weasel to absolutely obliterate the golem and even makes people believe that he was using wind magic. Seika is relieved that no one figured out that he had summoned a creature because summoners are not allowed in this tournament. After this, Seika heads to where Amiyu and Yifa are cheering him on. Amiyu tells Seika that Yifa wants him to forfeit after seeing that Kyle guy killing his opponent. She even offers to crush his skull with her thick thighs, but Seika refuses. He reassures her that he won't get hurt. Amiyu then asks Seika if he will join the Royal Guards after winning this tournament. She's betting on Seika harder than Seika bets on himself. Realizing this, he questions the reason behind it. Amiyu tells him that she cannot picture him losing to anyone and starts blushing. As they are conversing, it is time for Mabel's second match. She is up against Howlo, the Earth Magician who believes in gender equality, and shoots stones at her immediately. Mabel pulls out her double katana and slashes them like sausages. This shocks Howlo, and he realizes that mid-level magic won't do to her and decides to cast greater magic. He forges a barrier in front of himself and begins casting the spell. Mabel, however, obliterates the barrier with ease, but before she could strike him, Howlo forges multiple barriers in an attempt to stop her. However, Mabel's gravity magic proves too much for him as she destroys the barriers with relative ease. She then pulls her Excalibur and forces Howlo to surrender. With this, Mabel wins the second round as well, and the commentator addresses her as the red-haired hero. This shocks Seika, and he questions the reason behind it. Amiyu tells him that the second hero was named Mabel and had a similar appearance to her. Later that night, a sus guy is sending out a pigeon to send a message, but Seika interferes and captures the pigeon. He addresses the guy as a demon spy, but he refuses and walks past Seika. He immediately turns out and ambushes Seika, only to get captured by him. Seika had gathered all this information using his Shigakami he had scattered throughout the town. He then questions the guy regarding his objective, but he refuses to tell him. Seika has no other choice but to use his Ayakashi to read his mind. He then summons an ugly monkey named Satori that can read minds. With Satori's help, Seika gathers all the information from the guy. He learns that he was after Mabel Crane because they believe she is the hero since she was born in the year of prophecy and possesses all the features of the hero. Now that he has acquired the necessary information, Seika allows Satori to devour the spy. After he's done eating, Satori reads Seika's mind, which infuriates him, and he warns him to never do that again. After sending Satori back, Seika retrieves the message but fails to decode it. Despite this, he has still figured out what the Academy wants, and that is to have the false hero Mabel win this tournament and grab attention. This way, they can protect the real hero Amiyu from the demons. He also assumes that Mabel is a fake name and is really curious about her real identity. Mabel is even more fake than my toxic ex. The following day, Kyle manages to defeat his next opponent rather easily and proceeds to the next round. Even though his opponent was pretty damn strong, he was no match for Kyle's evil eye. Another young knight named Reinus is pretty famous among the audience owing to his ability to use all four elements just like Amiyu. He meets Seika on his way back and is looking forward to their battle in the finals. Both Seika and Mabel have managed to win their matches and will meet in the semifinals. Once again, Mabel warns Seika to forfeit because she doesn't want to hurt him. Seika, however, brutally refuses her and gaslights her into battling him. It is finally time for Kyle's battle against Reinus the Knight, who immediately casts a protective spell to protect himself from the evil eye. He then attacks Kyle with Fireball, but much to his surprise, the attack didn't even scratch him. He keeps attacking him while Kyle approaches him slowly. Amiyu and the others are shocked, but Seika realizes that Kyle is probably using gravity magic. With no other option left, Reinus closes in the distance between them and ambushes Kyle to strike him. Kyle, on the other hand, uses Dark Element Shadow Magic to halt his movement and forces the judge to announce him as the winner. Kyle has now reached the grand finale. Later that night, Yuki transforms into her human form and lies beside Seika, which shocks him. Suddenly, Seika notices something approaching them from the roof and protects Yuki. It turns out that Mabel wants to take him out before the semifinal, but she is no match for Seika's abilities. Realizing this, Mabel takes to her toes and escapes. Seika knows that leaving Mabel behind like this is far too dangerous and decides to chase her.